I was dreaming up a great introduction because everybody's been asking for them, but I still don't have a good one. I'm Nate Bauer. Sean Fitz is joining me. This is the Blue White Illustrated Daily Edition. I just shout out to the guy that critiques my intros on the podcast. It is what it is. We can't do better than that. He's not
right.
wrong.
I mean, it's become a bit, really, is what it's become. So, joke's on him, I guess.
Yeah, I'm going to lean into it.
This is a Monday show. It's not a live Monday show because National Signing Day is on Wednesday. We do plan to go live on Wednesday night. I don't know if I told our producers I was going to say that in the outset, but we plan on doing that because it's a very busy recruiting day. It's a very busy recruiting week, and a lot of things are happening. Penn State's a couple of weeks away from playing in the Rose Bowl against Utah, so we've got that. Rose Bowl Media Day was on Friday, and we're just catching up on some stuff. Got through the weekend okay. Penn State not busy whatsoever on the recruiting front this weekend, which never happens. So they get that out of the way. But there's plenty to talk about.
Yeah, let's start from the jump with the immediate news, the roster news that's happened for Penn State over the weekend. I think it was it Friday night, Saturday night. Nick Tarburton was kind of the first guy to announce the guys that are on the fence, right? Those guys that have a bonus year that can come back. Fitz, why don't you detail that one for us?
Yeah, it's going to be a little dicey with those situations because, Nick Tarburton, they would have welcomed him back, but he's been around for a long, long time. And college football is tough, and college football hanging around the same place for a long time, like he has done, is number one, admirable. Most guys don't make it 5 years, but number two, 6 years is an even longer time. So he's going to go pro, give it a shot. I don't know that he's looked at as a potentially high draft pick or draft pick at all. But he's been a really solid player for Penn State. Honestly, outperformed the expectations that I had for him because I wasn't sure if he'd ever get on the field. I mean, this is a guy for his first couple of seasons was just always in the training room, never out on the practice field, and obviously injuries piled up for him. But he did a heck of a job in coming through, and it was tough injury. I mean, hips and knees and things like that, just stuff that guys don't bounce back like that from. So Nick Tarburton, a warrior through that all, and had a pretty good season for Penn State. I know everybody looks at the flashier numbers with Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac getting the sacks and things like that, but there's a role for a guy like Nick Tarburton, and I know Penn State staff, just from speaking to them informally, are really going to miss what he brought to the table.
Yeah, I do think that there's a point to make that probably gets lost a little bit in the shuffle about he talked before he made this announcement. He talked about all of the things that go into the decision. And one is just this like commitment. You have to be all in. You have to be willing to do all of the things that come with college football. And I do think there is an element, again, that gets overshadowed of like, you got to take classes, right? You're still taking an academic course load, even when you're into that 5th and 6th year of the process. And so if there's something else out there that appeals to you of not having a midterm to study for, not having a term paper that's right, like there's an expiration date, I feel like, for a lot of people in their lives with those types of things. And for a guy who's been playing football as long as he has and has been in the college football system for as long as he has, some of the requirements that are involved in being a college football player, just they get tedious. We've seen this through the years.
You have to be on like all the time for a long period of time, and you don't get a ton of downtime, and it's some people can do that. I mean, Jonathan Sutherland came back for a 6th year, and he's not going to be a drafted guy, but still at the same time, like, he had to be on and get his couple degrees and things like that. It's very hard to do. It's very tiring, especially for a guy like Nick that's been through as many injuries as he's been through. I think he made a lot of his career, made the most of his career. And, they're going to miss him playing in that role. I think defensive end will be fine moving forward. You feel pretty good about Adisa and Chop. And then the younger guys, Denai Dennis Sutton and Amin Vanover. And, you see what you can throw else, or what else you can throw into that group. with Davon Townley leaving, Rodney McGraw, who was more of an interior guy at this point anyway, leaving. You've got some questions, but further down the list in terms of the depth chart. So I think defensive end will be fine, but you would have liked to have a Nick Tarburton back for another year just to play that role. And, he was the one guy that you could really say could play the run with and be effective with it, but it'll clear the way for those younger guys, namely Dennis Sutton and Amin Vanover to take over. So I think there's good things on this from both sides. But yeah, I don't think people will understand how much of a grind this absolutely is, and how a lot of it, it's fantastic being out there and in the helmet in front of 110,000 people, but a lot of the time is not spent in front of 110,000 people cheering you on. So there's a lot that goes into that. So we'll see what happens. Penn State has not been hit by the portal very hard. In fact, we expected movement and probably a little bit more movement, and yep. not ruling this out after the bowl game or after the spring when guys have decided that they've figured out where they're at in terms of graduating and things of that nature. But Penn State has not been hit hard at all. We've seen a lot of schools that have been gutted by the portal, and Penn State certainly not on that list. But a couple of guys found new homes. The aforementioned Rodney McGraw is going to go to Louisville. It's an interesting one. We knew he wanted to get closer to his Indiana home, so this is a little bit closer. It's not exactly Purdue where I thought he would land, but he is landing with the Purdue staff, so the old Purdue staff. So there's certainly some connections there to his home state. And then Christian Veilleux. This is the interesting one because it's been rumored for a while. We thought maybe Tech reuniting with Brent Pry, but Pitt has been one that's been rumored for a long time, and he committed this weekend to join that room, which already took one transfer in this cycle in Phil Jurkovic, to join that room and potentially eventually win a starting job at Pittsburgh.
Yeah. He's still young though. That's the thing that occasionally gets overlooked is he's got certainly 3 years to continue to play, and you would expect you would anticipate that there would be some opportunity there for him.
I think it's a little clearer than at Penn State. I mean,
yeah,
no doubt
for sure.
So,
For sure. We're going to get into some Rose Bowl talk here in just a bit. But before we do, I need to thank our sponsor for this show, which is CAT, Collegiate Athletic Travel. They are fantastic. I've used them personally. Blue White Illustrated has flown with them and done trips with them for many years to Penn State's bowl destinations. And speaking personally, they're top notch. I mean, it's an unbelievable. I don't know if this is exactly the right way to phrase it, but it's a mindless experience. You literally just show up. You can get on a plane and end up at your destination without the layovers, without the hassles, without all of the stuff that goes into travel these days. And so they are our sponsor today, and they are selling a great rate if you're still looking for a trip to the Rose Bowl for $895. They're doing direct trips, direct flights, round trip from Harrisburg to Hollywood Burbank Airport, LA's easy in, easy out airport. We did it. We did a state college to Burbank, but it is unbelievable. So much easier than flying through LAX, which Sean and I are doing.
Can't wait.
Later this month. Can't wait. Again, $895. Book now. There's only a couple of seats left at that price, so take advantage. Again, Penn State's longtime bowl travel experts, Collegiate Athletic Travel, CAT. For complete details and to book your trip, go to athletictravel.com. That is athletictravel.com. Thanks again to CAT for sponsoring this show today. A little bit of news, right? In addition, from outside of Penn State's roster, right? Penn State was able to bring somebody into the program this weekend. Detail that for us, Fitz.
First scholarship addition from the portal comes in the form of freshman All-American Riley Thompson, who isn't actually a freshman, which is really it's really interesting because he was named a freshman All-American last year at FAU, averaging 45.4 yards a punt, but he's just got 1 year left, or possibly 2 with an appeals process or things like that. So I think that's interesting to note. That news came across this weekend. You wonder what's going on with Alex Paqueta, the freshman that came in last year. But Penn State feels like they need somebody that can do it right away, consistently. And Riley Thompson, a little bit older, and he'll have an opportunity to do that this year. And if they're spending a scholarship on a position or on a punter, then that must mean something is they're going to count on him very soon.
Yeah.
So Riley Thompson, the latest member of the Penn State portal class, that also includes Alex Felkins, who was on campus over the weekend, the kicker from Columbia, who will actually walk on and I think compete next year with Sanders Sahadak. So those of you that are special teams heads that follow this podcast, like myself, it's very important. I mean, you don't worry about your punter until you've got reasons to complain about your punter. So, and you feel that about every specialist position. Riley Thompson is a guy that's going to come in, provide competition right away, and I think he'll play right away as well. So it'll be very interesting to see that competition in the spring. But as I said, he was a freshman All-American last year. FAU kind of did him dirty by making, actually no, it kind of enhanced his profile by making him a freshman. But his academic calendar, his NCAA calendar started when he was a student back in Australia. So he's only got maybe 2 years to go, 2 years pending an appeal with COVID and things with the COVID year and things like that. So Riley Thompson, a big addition, and a guy that can come in and play right away.
Yeah, and Paqueta is honestly, naturally, we're going to talk about Paqueta a little bit as a guy who I think it was the storyline in spring was, oh my goodness, this guy coming into the program is one of the better high school prospects that Penn State has been able to land or had been dealing with. Blake Gillikin was a huge proponent of him. I don't think any of that's changed, right? Like Alex Paqueta is still a guy that Penn State is going to look to do some things, good things, productive things through his career at Penn State. It's just a matter of, and this became clear through the course of the season and even in the preseason, consistency. That's it. It's always consistency, and particularly at that position, you see how important it is.
Yeah, young specialists do not always make that transition seamlessly. I know a couple of guys have come in and kicked and punted right away, but that's not something that is the norm. And you would like it to be, because you would like to stack 4 years on top of 4 years on top of 4 years if you're using your scholarships. But it just, in the reality of the situation, is not always that easy. The consistency factor, I mean, he was not close to Barney Amore when Barney won the starting punting job. I think a lot of people expected him, and myself included, I expected him to come in and be the guy. And it just sometimes it doesn't happen like that. So he's got some improvement to make from a consistency level. You could say the same about Sahadak. I mean, they're bringing in Felkins to compete with him. And I think there's plenty of questions. Jake Pinniger, I don't expect him back, but he's still got that year available. But these are the guys that we're looking to for next year. Speaking of which, there are a bunch of guys that have decisions to make, and a bunch of guys that gave, non-answers at Media Day on Friday. Yeah. You go down the list: Brenton Strange, Juice Scruggs, who accepted that Shrine Bowl invitation, Adisa Isaac, Jake Pinniger. I even asked Chris Stoll what his plans were afterward. And he's a 6-year senior. He cannot play unless he got one of those waivers that the Oregon tight end got, who's going for I think a 9th year now. And he was saying he's just focused on the Rose Bowl. So that's all you're going to get out of these guys right now, unless they put out something like Nick Tarburton put out the other day. They're well trained. They do a heck of a job in that strategic communications with getting those guys to say the right things, and you're not going to get much out of them. But we did get from the players, probably the most noteworthy item was that Jair Brown was going to play in the Rose Bowl. And I think we thought he was going to play in the Rose Bowl, but he did come out and say that he's 50-50 at one point, because there's a lot going on with this situation. So Jair Brown's going to play. I probably be on some sort of pitch count as one of the older guys, but at the same time, it gives you that veteran leadership through practice, through that trip, and it gives him the opportunity to get out and play in the Rose Bowl, which we've talked about his story a bunch of times, from Trenton, from Lackawanna, from coming where he's come from to play in the Rose Bowl. I think it's something different than last year when they were in this situation going to Tampa to play in the Outback Bowl.
Yeah, I thought that the way that James Franklin, he was asked specifically about opt-outs, and I love nothing more than reading between the lines. And I thought that in particular, his response about opt-outs was telling, because he said, he had never had an opt-out until last year. And he says, quote, really the way, in my mind, we've built it at Penn State, there's really no reason to opt out. We will be flexible with all our guys. I want our guys to be as successful as they possibly can. I want the bowl experience to be a great experience. We'll work with our guys. All right. What does that mean? That means if guys are uncomfortable, if guys think that they're going to be in any particular danger, any high risk activity, things that the percentages are riskier in terms of putting your health at risk, Penn State won't play them in those situations. Penn State, right? I mean, if you're a punt returner, maybe you don't do that. Kick return, you don't do that. There are different things, whether it's limiting their rep count, limiting the types of plays that they're in on. Like Penn State will be flexible with those things, and I think that is what James Franklin is saying. There's no reason to opt out because we're going to do whatever the kid wants to do in the first place, right? Like, you're not as a staff and as a football program, they're not going to go against the wishes of these players. It's more important to Penn State, the program, to have their participation, to have that buy-in, and to keep the group together, all of those things. So I thought that was pretty interesting. In the way that he's not saying it, but that's more or less where he's coming from.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it is about what provides the most value, because that experience is, of course, one thing. But it also, when we talked about this with Joey Porter, being a first round pick at cornerback provides the program a ton of value. And, if he thinks that not playing in this game is the best way to become a first round pick, Penn State's for that. They're fine with it. I mean, you obviously want to have your best guys out there, but at the same time, you want to do what's best by the kid, by the family, and by the program. And I think they've done that. Last year, a bit of an anomaly, like I mentioned, long season where guys found themselves in a situation where they thought it was best to sit out. It wasn't best for the team in the Outback Bowl against Arkansas, but you saw some budding things coming out of that game. So I think that's important to remember. But yeah, you've got guys, what does this mean for some of the younger guys that will get practice reps? Juice Scruggs, we're talking about him accepting the Shrine Bowl, which seems to be telling. Brenton Strange he talked about the combine the other day, which seems to be telling. And we've been saying for a long time on our site, both of these guys, we don't expect them to be around next year, but at the same time, no finality from those guys means something. But you work those younger guys in there. You work Khalil Dinkins in through there. You work Vega Yone in at guard, and switch some things around. So I think there's value at every level of the program when you talk about opt-outs, and we've talked about this before. Like, this is individual decisions that you don't take lightly, and I'm fine with anybody making the decision that they think is best for their future, because I think that in essence that's what college is all about.
Yeah, no doubt. Before we continue our Rose Bowl talk and some of the things that we saw and heard at Media Day, I want to make sure that we acknowledge and thank our other sponsor for this episode, which is Rogue Shop. Rogue is obviously a group that's been with us for the past few months. They've been a great supporter of Blue White Illustrated. They are at rogueshop.com. ROGUESHOP.com. Husband and wife team that specialize in small batch, sustainable plant medicine, true holistic type of small business. They're based out of Wisconsin, and they really come at this professionally, right? I mean, it is pure plant-based, holistic medicine. So whether you are looking for CBD flower, CBD hot cocoa, hemp soap, lip balm, bath soaks, they sell all of it. It is all at their shop, which you can go check out. And if you use our promo code BWI, that obviously lets them know that you came from Blue White Illustrated. So thank you to them again at Rogue Shop, ROGUESHOP.com.
Did I get hot cocoa in there?
There's a hot cocoa. There's a hot cocoa.
Amazing.
T Frank's got all the product. I don't have.
Yeah, he's holding out on us. Let's get some of that over the mountain here.
A little bit. Caden, Olu, and Kevon. That's kind of news, right?
The trifecta. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, as they're called.
James does the thing where he says he's hopeful to get them back, and he did not ever say that Caden Wallace or nor Olu Fashanu are going to be out for the season. So he left that door open for them. But yeah, you've been able to play through it in the last month of the season, but to get those bodies back would be good. Caden was out there the last couple of weeks, whether it be practice, whether it be in the pregame. He looked like he was close. Olu was not around there. So just getting any bodies back at that offensive line that you can is good. Kevon continues to be we've been watching him, wondering what his next step is going to be. I don't think there's any finality on the situation, because you look at the reality of it, and you've got two freshman running back that took the ball. They were the hot hands, and they ran with it. Kevon did deal with some injuries, but at the same time was kind of phased out as well. So you've got questions about whether or not, and some of the things that he's done in this offseason would lead you to believe that he plans on coming back. But the first step would be getting there to the Rose Bowl and maybe having a role in the Rose Bowl. I do think that would be a big piece for next year. Like, you've got the running back situation that they're in, of course, looking at the portal, looking at a potential second running back in this class, and it's 3:30 on Monday afternoon. So we're kind of waiting out a decision from Cam Wallace right now, the running back from Georgia. But you would love to get an experienced guy, whether it be in the portal, whether it be Kevon Lee, an experienced guy that you could rely on. And that's a pretty big piece right there, because you don't want to have to go through another season where you play half of the games with essentially two running backs.
Yeah. I mean, just to make it clear, because I'm not sure how clear it is. Like, Penn State does not want Kevon Lee to leave, right? I mean, like, it would very much be of benefit to the room. I mean, to play the way that they did with two scholarship running backs through that last third of the season, last half of the season, once Devin Ford left. It just went from a situation where they were stocked. You had five at the beginning of the season with Keziah Holmes, and all of a sudden it kind of evaporated on them into just two. So the fact that
I did not suggest doing that again. Yeah,
they got wise.
I mean, you could say it. They got lucky with the way that those guys stayed healthy, and that's not a reflection on Nick Singleton and Katron Allen as much as it is. We've seen Maryland lose 5 tailbacks. We saw Penn State in 2012 lose all of the tailbacks essentially, and they eventually made do with Zach Zwinak, but at the same time, it was not an ideal situation.
Yeah. And nobody asked about Kevon Lee at Bowl Media Day, right? Like, James Franklin brought that up on his own, and so that rang some alarm bells for me in terms of, hey, it's like trying to keep him involved, trying to keep him part of the program, and keep his name as part of that conversation. Moving on from those guys, there were a couple other things obviously that stood out. Manny Diaz was certainly, tremendously well-spoken. I thought it was the best media appearance that he has had through his time at Penn State. Just so relaxed, so confident, and there's reason for it, right? I mean, there's every reason for him to feel very confident right now. What were some of your takeaways from him?
Well, he spent the last year at Miami, everyone calling for his head, and then all of a sudden, he comes here. I don't want to call it a low pressure job, but it's much different being a defensive coordinator than being a head coach. And then your defense plays like that. You should feel pretty good about yourself if you're Manny Diaz. And he will find himself on these short lists for these different jobs. I think it was the FAU job was the one that was the FAU job that he was mentioned for. So he should be on these lists, but I think it was very important that he kind of laid out his position. He's like, hey, I'm not necessarily looking, which every coach is always looking to move up, no doubt about it. But at the same time, like, it's got to be the right job. I'm sure he's making pretty decent coin right now. So taking a job where he's going to take a big pay cut to be in charge once again isn't necessarily the best route. And I think he's seen that before, or he's at least watched guys do that before. So that was cool. And again, he seems to be displaying the confidence that his defense was playing with. And I think it's been really cool to watch this defense evolve. We heard about it in the preseason where guys were excited to play in this defense because you can be an individual star in this defense. And I know that's not ultimately what everything is about, but you can rack up numbers, turnover numbers, and things like that, sack numbers, from different areas. And I think it was really cool to see all that come to fruition, especially with your preseason reporting was spot on when you talked about Manny Diaz and how his defense would be different than Brent Pry's defense. And Brent, there's a lot to be said for the way that Brent Pry did things, but it's just I would say a little bit more fun watching this one.
Yeah, no, certainly the playmaking was accentuated, and it's just, man, I mean, Abdul Carter in year two, it's interesting
Erasers help,
because
game breakers help. That's not
they
that's,
they certainly do, and it also it's so reminiscent of, Micah Parsons. Really, I'm not making that direct comparison because I think it's obviously so early and too early to do that, but the notion of what Micah Parsons was at the end of that 2019 season when he went nuts in the Cotton Bowl, like that sense of anticipation, I think is similar for Abdul Carter and what it might look like from him given a second go round next year. Pat Kraft was a guy who took the podium at Beaver Stadium. He had a few things to go through. NIL was one of them. We will, for all of your listening pleasure, save that until another day to talk about. But Beaver Stadium was one thing that he did discuss that I think everybody is very interested in.
Is it a renovation? Is it a rebuild? Is it both? I
Does it matter?
Does it matter? Yes. Will the press box fall off the stadium before they get to it? I don't know. No, I mean, it's a very interesting thing because that building is a bit dated when you look at around the Big Ten. And I am being kind because I know people have a strong emotional attachment to that building, but at the same time, it's an erector set for a reason. Like that's kind of what you're going with. And, taking this program into the new era of this program is going to require, more amenity. It's very easy to watch the game at home on your HD TV in the comfort of your own home. You have to meet them in the middle, provide the experience that, provide an experience that makes it worth making that trip, especially at a place like Penn State, where you've got to drive an hour and a half from Harrisburg, a couple hours from Pittsburgh, Philly, New York, wherever it may be, for a lot of these guys to come in. So I think that that's really what you're trying to get across is you're trying to modernize the program as a whole. But a good way to do that is by finding the right path in that building.
Yeah. He for those who weren't able to listen to what Pat Kraft said about the subject, he more or less pigeonholed them into a renovation, right? It like he didn't say he more or less kept the possibility of a brand new build on a brand new plot of land as being out of the question, right? Like
Right.
I mean, do you
Which
think
makes
that's
sense.
fair?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And so, but the important thing, and this is whether it's insights at the Lions Den message board, which you need to join for $10 between now and next August, the end of next August, please sign up. It's a great value. But some of the insights that we've received there, and some of the people and the way that you can see based on the semantics, the wording that he uses. Okay, it's probably going to be a renovation, but that renovation is very likely going to look like a complete rebuild in various sections, right? That like this will be a section by section deconstruction, right? Like deconstruction and reconstruction of a more or less a brand new stadium. And so we're going to have these conversations and people are going to talk about it. And there's all different paths that I understand, about people's opinions about Beaver Stadium. And ultimately, I think it's the site will remain the same. And so given the fact that the site will likely remain the same and that they intend to have a recommendation within the next few months is what he said. So, that's something that's going to go to the board of trustees and to the president, and they'll have to figure out where to go from there, funding, all of that stuff. He didn't get into that, but it's going to be a brand new building. Like ultimately, the building that you walk into is not the building that it is today, because you can't retrofit a stadium like Beaver Stadium. Like it's so discombobulated and disjointed that it does seem very much like it's headed towards a complete rebuild there.
And it's let's say this, it's a really cool building and experience and nostalgia and things like that. But there are improvements that definitely could be and need to be made.
Yeah, I love going to Beaver
I'm
Stadium.
just playing that side where they're going to think that we're just crapping on the stadium, and
No,
you know,
I mean, it's certain. I understand the nostalgia side of it. I just think it's that there's a little bit of a lack of imagination about what could be, right? What the experience needs to be in the modern fan attendance era, right? Like you look at some of these other stadiums and these other places that we've been fortunate enough to go and cover Penn State at. We're still not like having that fan experience of sitting in the stands, and I understand that, but whether it's our own experiences in the past or people around us, the cramped metal bleachers where people are like flailing to get over you to be able to go to the bathroom, and bathroom lines are forever. Like those things just don't sell today. They don't
yeah,
they don't do as well. And so while the demand may still be high for Penn State football tickets, in the future, you're not building for 5 years from now. You're building for 40 years from now. And that's the type of thing that Penn State's going to have to get figured out there.
yeah.
Enough.
Sitting sideways for the Ohio
Yeah,
Bobcats is not exactly the amenities that you're looking for in a stadium.
no, no. And I have spoken enough. Fitz, the rest of the show is you. Recruiting storylines. I know we've got a fast 40-yard dash here between now and Wednesday, but what are some of the things that you're expecting? And I actually have another question for you. You start there.
I'll start here. You don't walk away. No, I mean, signing day on Wednesday. As we mentioned before, waiting out a decision from Cam Wallace. We're recording on Monday afternoon. We're expecting a decision on Monday from the running back from Georgia. So not going to get too deep into that one. But I don't expect a ton of fireworks here before Wednesday. Daniel Harris is the guy that I think Penn State has been, putting up there as their top priority. And I don't really see this one getting done. I put in my RPM for Georgia on Monday morning, so you've got some things at play here that make it tough to get him out of Miami and away to the north. And I just don't see that would happen for Penn State. No visitors, as we mentioned over the weekend. Quintrell Travis, the junior college defensive tackle, who won the MVP award in the junior college national championship game that Iowa Western won. Did not come in this weekend. There were some movement things at play. He had to get out of his housing in Iowa Western. He's going to come in January. He's not a January enrollee, so he's going to come in and take an official visit in January. It'd be very interesting to see how his profile will sort of blow up between now and then. But signing in February, you've always got these guys that seemingly go from a couple of offers or whatever to very popular guys. Penn State actually offered a guy, Chimdi Onoa, from Dundalk, Maryland, which not too many prospects coming out of Dundalk on Sunday night. These guys that can really blow up and really help their recruitment. And not everybody can wait until February to sign, and I understand that, but some of these guys will benefit and get more options. With Quintrell Travis, you're looking at Auburn possibly coming into the mix, Tennessee coming into the mix as well. So once these schools figure out their numbers, once these schools figure out where they're headed and get everything settled on Wednesday, then they'll take a look at February and see what's up. We're also waiting out Conrad Hussey. Penn State got him in the class a while ago, but South Florida recruiting, man, it's something different. He was at Miami over the weekend, was at Florida State last weekend. I know there was a Colorado visit rumored that he did not take. So Penn State's sort of waiting on pins and needles because you can feel really good about it one moment, and then all of a sudden you get some new information and some things change completely. So watching Conrad Hussey, again, Daniel Harris, I picked to Georgia. I don't see that one changing before Wednesday, but this one has changed probably 3 or 4 times in the last month. So I can't say that one for sure. And of course, waiting out a decision from Cam Wallace. So I don't expect a ton of additions before Wednesday. This class, as you're looking at it, is pretty much as it will stand on Wednesday, and we'll see what happens on National Signing Day. But don't forget to join us on National Signing Day. Ryan and I will have a recruiting show that night. What's your question?
You guys will have a recruiting show that night. We will have live coverage. James Franklin has a press conference at 2 p.m. A bunch of the staffers, Terry Smith will be there. I believe Andy Frank will be there at that press conference on
Alan Zamitis and Kenny Sanders will be there, which I'm really looking for. Whenever we get those guys that don't have microphones in front of their face all the time. I don't want to say they slip up, but they are a little bit more loose with their comments, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Alan Zamitis did the Penn State coaches show, James Franklin's like Thursday night radio shows, or one of the off weeks or something, this past year. And I mean, he's great. He's great. Yeah. It's great feedback. It's great insight.
Fresh air. Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about those players being trained earlier. These guys don't get that kind of training. I'm sure AZ had it when he was at Penn State, but that was a long, long time ago.
It's nice. It's nice to get outside of the usual suspects. So that will be on Wednesday. But before then, Fitz, transfer portal stuff, like do you anticipate that happening concurrent to? I mean, it doesn't seem like you're able to necessarily press pause. I'm just wondering how that you expect that dynamic to play out on Wednesday, the day, but also just this week in general as they're trying to juggle roster spots here.
I don't think Wednesday matters all that much in the transfer portal because you have the opportunity to keep these guys and sign them in January. There's that window in January. So right now we're in a dead period. No visits whatsoever. That includes transfers. But on January 4th, that window opens a little bit where mid-year transfers can come in and take official visits. Penn State will host the Wake Forest cornerback, whose name is escaping me right now, but they'll have an opportunity to get those guys back on campus. I would say this weekend, they had hoped to get a couple of guys on campus, a couple of receivers on campus. Did not work out that way. Dante Thornton went to Miami. Devontae Walker went to North Carolina. I think he's going to end up in North Carolina. He's a Charlotte kid. You know, there's a lot pulling for him there. Caden Prather went to Maryland. So the guys that they were really looking heavily to get on campus this weekend, they did not get on campus. That is not good. That is not ideal. Now, those three themselves, or excuse me, two of those three, Prather and Thornton, I don't think you necessarily need to show them the campus and things like that because they've been here, but you want to get them back as much as possible. So yeah, you're still looking if you're a Penn State coach where you've put this value and you've put this priority on getting a receiver, you're still out there looking, you're still offering guys, which I said it before this cycle started. They're going to offer a lot of guys. It's not necessarily we're offering this guy because we think we've lost out on plan A, whatever, they're going to offer a lot of guys, and then they're going to go back and they're going to check that tape and they're going to see if that's a guy that can fit in there. Because you are taking two, it gives you a little bit more of a little bit more leeway in that evaluation process, but they got to get these guys on campus. I mean, and I think that you look at where these guys are coming from. They want to get on campus, the second week of January. So maybe they do hold out for that window, but not getting them on campus gives them the entire Christmas break to think about it, gives them the entire Christmas break to reflect on the trips that they take and really takes down your chances if you're Penn State.
Yeah. Interesting. Something to watch. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Not the best color man in baseball for nothing. Thanks, Nate.
Yeah. There you go. What else you got? Anything else before we wrap this thing up?
No, not really. Like I said, we've got stuff all week on the site. Covering recruiting is never boring. Like I said, it was really interesting. So I put that RPM pick in for Daniel Harris to Georgia, and I was texting you guys beforehand. I'm like, I'm going to do it, and then I got a phone call. I'm like, I'm not going to do it. And then I got a phone call an hour later. It's like, okay, maybe now I can do it. There's just so many twists, and it's not all for public consumption, but just so many twists in terms of how these things come down, because it's you're running big business right here, and things matter. Things are under the microscope in the last week of the recruiting period. I know it's crazy because a lot of these guys have been on the radar for a year or two or something like that, and to let it come down to the last second, not necessarily ideal. That's how I like to do things in my everyday life, but it's not exactly how you approach the biggest decision of your life. So I don't know. It's all fun. It's all done with perspective. And I hope that you guys follow us on BWI, because I think we're doing some great work right now. And it's definitely, I think, worth your time.
Could not have said it better myself. I do think my last thought is that always strikes me around this time of year is signing days are typically pretty boring for Penn State. Like they're not boring is the wrong word, but they're straightforward because the plan that Penn State has in place typically overwhelmingly goes to plan. It is executed. And so you don't have a lot of cold feet. You don't have, and if they do have cold feet, it's kept you know, undercover pretty well, and Penn State manages to pull out what it does because they are so invested in that side of recruiting, of eliminating the drama, of having the types of people involved in the program who are committed to the program, who want to be at Penn State. It is such a critical ingredient to what they do. And so, I was going to ask you, like, are you expecting any crazy drama on Wednesday? But I think that betrays everything that James Franklin and everything that Penn State football is shooting for in that space.
Well, James was asked about this the other day. They talked about the calendar and how it could change. But if you look at the reality of the situation at Penn State, if you've got 25 commits, probably 20 of them would sign as soon as they committed if you let them, like, because they're going to Penn State, and that's the type of kid that this program has recruited. You're going to have drama, especially in the age of NIL, which would certainly change things. But that's the way that they've done this, and they've done it with a purpose, and that's why it's really interesting to watch the following, because they do things in a cyclical nature. You've got a bunch of guys that commit it at one time, and then you go a long stretch without getting one, and everybody gets upset because there hasn't been a commit in a certain amount of time. And then last week 3 guys commit, and then this week the thing is like, well, what about receivers in the portal? Like, what's going on? Like, and that's the nature of the beast, undoubtedly. But to belie the success that they've had by worrying about what's going wrong is just I think that's a symptom of some other stuff. So but no, they've done things for a reason. They've done things largely the same way with different processes throughout the last couple of cycles, and it's turned out well. I mean, they're starting to find themselves in a spot where they stack classes, and they have to continue to build off of what they've done in the last couple of cycles.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm going to take us home here, Fitz. I am Nate Bauer. He is Sean Fitz. Please, if you have not already and you're watching this on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit notifications, all the stuff to do that you could possibly do with Blue White Illustrated. Please do it. If you don't subscribe yet to our site, please subscribe. Check out the site in the first place. Read the free stuff. Come check out our free board. Get a feel for things. But I think that you're going to see with our premium information and some of the premium insights that you get from our staff, of which Sean is the best. Ryan Snyder is the next best. And I'm the next best after that. It's a murderer's row of what we feel is some of the best coverage of Penn State sports that you can get. Penn State football recruiting in particular is elite. For $10, you can have access to that from now until the end of August 2023. So please take advantage of that. And if you're listening to this on podcast, rate us, review us. Love to get that feedback. So once again, I'm Nate. That's Sean, Blue White Illustrated. Stick with us this week. We'll catch you next time.